Okay, we might as well get started. Are we ready? Good. Open mic. This is the exciting part of the meeting. The first 15 minutes, we allow for open mic. If you have something you would like to discuss with City Council, would you like to come up and give us your name and tell us what you're thinking? So there it is at the magical podium. Awful quiet bunch. So, okay, well, then having seen none or have nobody come up, I'd like to call the Monday, June 5th, 2017 regular City Council meeting to order. Could we have the invocation by Ethan McClarty of the E-Free Church? Ethan, would you please rise?
Father, thank you for this opportunity to come together with one purpose, and that's to bless others. Help us to see the gift that is today and the excitement that is our future together. Let us do this with purpose that comes from your knowledge. Let that knowledge have grace and compassion. In the power of Christ, amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation. Okay, thank you. Would you call the roll, please?
Troutman?
Here.
Council members Smith? Here. Ekstrom? Here. Schumacher? Here. Gill?
Here.
Weed?
Here.
And Meisner?
Here.
Councilmember Jaquez is having his anniversary today and is excused.
Okay. Well, thank you, Kathy. Do we have any written requests to speak to council?
We have several written requests to speak, but all of those are on an item that's already on the agenda.
Okay. Okay. Could I then ask for approval of the minutes for the May 15th regular City Council meeting and the May 17th Vision Committee meeting? Are there any corrections at this time? Mr. Meisner.
Let me raise my hand.
You,
Yes. Wherever the minutes are at in regards to my little announcement, my intention was not to resign, as it's mentioned in the minutes from the Stormwater Committee. I had volunteered for that committee under the assumption that I would be able to attend those meetings because they would be after my work hours. Most of those meetings to date have been during my work hours, and I was merely apologizing for not being able to attend those meetings. My intention was not to resign, as though Tony may have suggested. So we're correcting the minutes just to say back what I said on video, that I couldn't make the meetings.
And you're always welcome to the meetings that you can make.
Thank you, aside from what Tony says.
does that call for a correction then? Have you heard the correction?
Correction would state Councilmember Meisner apologized for not attending the recent morning meetings of the Stormwater Task Force Committee, adding that he offered to serve on this committee if the meetings were held later in the afternoon.
Okay. Could I have a motion second from council? Mr. Meisner.
Mayor and council, I move that we approve the minutes as amended for the 5:15 regular city council meeting and the 5:17 vision committee meeting.
Second.
Wheat second. Would you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Meisner?
Aye.
Councilmember Weed?
Aye.
Councilmember Gill?
Aye.
Councilmember Schumacher?
Aye.
Councilmember Smith?
Aye.
Councilmember Ekstrom?
Aye.
Approved by unanimous vote.
Thank you all. Are there any council member announcements at this time? Ms. Schumacher?
Mr. Mayor, I would like to make a motion on item number 15, appointing the Building Code Committee this evening, that we postpone that. Right now, at this time, we have new employee, Dina, getting her feet wet. We've got the summer coming up. We all have activities, events. We've got several meetings, committees, other committees that we're doing. And I don't see that it's going to be, it's going to make that much difference to things happening now, as if we do it, say, in August.
Councilmember Schumacher, can we have that motion when we do the agenda and just remove that item from the agenda?
That's great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Draw.
Any, Mr. Meisner, do you have something? That's
We have a
surprising.
government meeting.
Well, yeah, I was waiting to see if anybody was going to say anything. This Wednesday, there's a general government committee meeting at 4 p.m. here.
Smith?
Mr. Mayor, I would like to express gratitude to Councilmember Gill and to you, Mayor, for coming to our last Stormwater Task Force meeting. That was very productive to have you guys there. We met, just for information for the rest of you, we met with all of the county commissioners and other staff employees, and we were able to have some pretty good conversations or education as well about the stormwater and the EPA regulations that we're required to meet as being municipal area, as well as possible standards that maybe Fremont County would have to meet too, as being governors over urban development. We are looking forward to trying to do joint stormwater project in 2018 with monies from both city and county as we look forward to our budget, and possible conversation of creating a stormwater task or a district. That's a very initial brief conversation, but it's a start. And the next meeting is going to be on June 16th at 8:30 a.m. and would again invite any of you who can make it to please come. It's very educational and supportive. One more thing, I wanted to give you an update for the Community Recreation Center. We are still have been having meetings. We had a smaller committee to work together for obtaining the feasibility study. We also had Greenplay from Denver, a company from Denver, who did Montrose's feasibility study. Montrose just recently had their tax pass and have just built a $31 million facility. Greenplay, when they do our feasibility study, will decide what type of facility and price of facility that our community can support. That study, we are still garnering funds to get that study. We're looking at probably around a $50,000 price tag on that. We have committed funds from Canyon City, Fremont County, the St. Thomas More Hospital, and the Royal Gorge Bridge so far. And we also are currently seeking grant funding from El Pomar to help pay for that. If you know of any local sources or businesses that can help contribute towards the feasibility study, we'd absolutely love to have that conversation with you and your help on that. But we are moving forward in that direction.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. Any other council members? No?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I have letters of gratitude, and I see a few of the members out here for the Highway 50 Pedestrian Crosswalk Committee. And
Do we want to do that now?
go ahead. And
Good now? Okay, do we have the members of the Highway 50 Crosswalk Committee come forward? Thank you. Could you come and introduce yourself at the podium there?
Hello, my name is Dr. Shirley Squire, and I am a member of the committee. I'm a retired educational administrator here in Fremont County and very dedicated to this cause.
Okay.
And I want to thank you for allowing me to be on this committee and have this opportunity.
Thank you, Ms. Squire. Yes, ma'am.
Kim Smith. I own First Stitches Quilt Shop, and it was an honor to serve on the committee also, and I am enjoying participating in city activities, so.
Thank you for helping. So, do we have them come up? We'd like to have a photo of, could you come up to the front here, and we're going to meet down front and take a photo for the paper? The paper said it'll be a full page. No? And Adam, I see you back there.
Dina, why don't you come up as well?
Dina? Oh.
guys were just hugging, so come on.
Any more comments or announcements from Councilman Smith?
Well, I was just curious, Councilmember Schumacher, about how many people were on that committee total?
Like hundreds, but I think there was probably 22, 23.
So it was
Total.
actually a really quite sizable group. We had
Yes.
most of those members had come to our vision committee, about 2 weeks ago. But we do definitely want to express our thanks to so many citizens who have contributed their time to help us and be
A lot
participants.
of opinions and a lot of discussion, and it really was a good committee. So I appreciate them all.
Thank them and thank you as well for your representation.
Thank you and thank you.
Is it my turn?
Your turn.
My turn. Okay. Wednesday morning at 8:30, we'll be on KRLN at the, what is that called? Morning Line. Morning Line?
Oh.
What? So Morning Line. And I also want to announce that if you want it raining in the evening, the city will call a cruise night. So for 2 nights in a row, we had cruise night. It rained every night. So when it quits raining, we're going to, actually, we had cruise night on the 17th, and then we had cruise night last Friday night. There were a fair amount of cars that showed up, and it really rained. So we're going to go ahead and have another cruise night on the first Friday of July, right? And hopefully it won't rain, because we had several really nice cars out, and it turned out pretty good, even though it did rain like crazy. So, okay. Anybody else? Okay, then could we have adoption of the agenda and the consent agenda? Tony, would you review the consent agenda, please?
Yes, Mayor and Council. 5A would authorize the mayor's signature on an intergovernmental agreement with the Central Front Range Planning Commission for the development and maintenance of the Regional Transportation Plan. This plan is required by federal statute and by the Colorado Department, by Colorado's Transportation Commission to assist CDOT in development and maintenance of a statewide transportation plan. Adam Lancaster, who's our city engineer, has served as chairman and a member of that regional planning group since 2010, so that's a huge asset for the city, and we want to recognize him and the work that he does on behalf of the city on a regional basis. 5B would provide the city council and community, it's a 6-month progress report on the council's adopted 2017 business plan, which highlights and articulates what tactical measures and progress you've made on your 6 strategic priorities, which were economic development, public safety, infrastructure, the built environment, public trust and accountability, and community investment opportunities. So that's a good report card for the media in particular, hopefully to disseminate to the public so they can see what progress has been made in the last 6 months. Staff has worked hard, and certainly the council, in providing the direction to significant community initiatives as they were essentially requested to the citizen survey. 5C would authorize the city administrator to execute a memorandum of understanding with the Pueblo Chemical Depot for the use of their driving track for our police officer driver training. A similar MOU with the Pueblo Police Department will come before you on June the 19th. They just couldn't execute their agreement on time, but this will be a significant asset for our officers to get a world-class driver training at this facility. 5D is we only have one bid, a bid to install bulletproof glass at the municipal court. We had 3 vendors contacted. McCaslin Glass was awarded the bid at a cost of $11,046.
Any additional corrections?
Mr. Mayor,
Ms. Schumacher?
I would like to withdraw item number 15. Oh, not 15. Yes, number 15, the appointment of the Building Code Committee.
Second.
Thank you.
Approve the agenda and consent agenda with that removal.
With that out.
Okay.
Okay, Scott. Did you second that, Scott? Okay, I just want to make sure. Would you call the roll, please? Oh, any discussions on that? Mr. Meisner?
Tony, that cleanup on the bills, was that a completion of a project?
Cleanup,
$5,300.
yeah, that was an abatement. I believe that was abatement contract.
Right. That was a cleanup on a property that needed cleaning up.
So it's done.
One of
One,
them's done.
right, okay.
And we lien those properties so we can hopefully recoup those dollars for the public.
Yep. Okay.
So we have liened those properties, or will lien them? Okay. So when the property changes hands, the city gets its money back? Very good.
Actually, so it gets certified to the county, and so it'll show on the tax bill.
Okay. I think we got two more to clean up, right? One more?
Several.
Several more?
Yeah.
Okay. We did the admission, the more changes? Okay. Okay. Would you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Schumacher?
Aye.
Councilmember Ekstrom?
Aye.
Councilmember Meisner?
Aye.
Councilmember Smith?
Aye.
Councilmember Weed?
Aye.
Councilmember Gill?
Aye.
Approved by unanimous vote.
Okay, thank you all. Could we have the administrator's report, please, Tony?
Yeah, several things. First, we want to recognize, he's not here tonight, but if you see him, you need to thank him. Deputy Chief Alan Cooper has served as our acting chief for the last 6 months, done an outstanding job in providing not only leadership in the department, but continuity, and been a great resource for our new chief, Derek Harvey. So please thank him. He's done a fabulous job. We want to welcome Chief Derek Harvey. He will be sworn in officially on Friday at 9 o'clock, so if the public would like to attend that and get to meet the new chief, that would be great. He's excited about being here. He has housing, so he's ready to go. We also want to welcome our new Economic Development and Downtown Director, sitting in the back in that nice green shirt, Ryan Stevens. He's still looking for a home, so if he has something available, get a hold of him. We also want to recognize, and Adam has been a tremendous resource here in scheduling the road work related to project or Proposition 2A. The first 8 streets will go under construction. For example, Yale has essentially started, and we'll have a kickoff to commemorate the beginning of the 2A improvement process on June the 20th. That's Tuesday at 8 a.m. at Yale and College intersection. So that will be the beginning of significant needed road reconstruction community. 16th Street, Orchard, First, Greenwood, 10th, Mariposa, and East Main will follow. They'll be starting in June and through August, and most of these projects will be wrapped up by early September. And then because of the significant cost savings over our budget that Kiewit has provided us, Washington, Fairview, Whipple, Steinmeier, and Main Street between 50 and 16 are also additional candidates for improvement this summer. So we'll have that scheduled a little bit later. But again, we want to recognize Adam and Kiewit for doing a great job and fulfilling the public's obligation to get these improvements underway, and not only under budget, but we're doing more this summer than we had expected. So we're excited about that. That's it.
Thank you, Tony.
Question.
Mr. Meisner?
Tony, I seen somebody handing out flyers on East Main for the open house. Was that city or was that Kiewit?
I'm assuming it might be Kiewit, maybe some of our staff too, but yeah, that's scheduled, and Adam could speak to that if he wants to.
That's okay. I was just curious as to who, was it our employee or was it theirs?
No, that's Kiewitz employees. They're handed out invites to all the people on the affected streets for the open house on the 13th.
I applaud the city for taking that proactive step that you and I talked about, but that,
Yeah,
I happen to be in a merchant where they walked in and actually handed them a flyer and explaining that we're going to be tearing up the street and we'd like to invite you to come in and get some
maybe
education.
Adam could also speak a little bit about the website and the information that will be available real time so people can keep track of not only the streets, but also how to move around the community while these streets are under construction.
Right, so now if you go to the city's website, there's a specific page for 2A, plus it's on the ribbon on the home page for the streets. And if you click on that, there's a link there to the project website, and there's an email address as well, and a phone number that you can call for information. And then we plan on, once construction starts, there'll be a weekly update on what's going on and where you need to keep a lookout for detours and those sorts of things. Plus, they'll constantly be in contact with people on the streets when they're working.
Thank you.
Okay, any questions? Thank you. Okay, before we get into things, I would like to change and pull the public hearings first, and then those people that would be here for those public hearings, they can go on their way if they like, or they'd stay. Would that be okay with council? Instead of,
Not a problem.
no problem?
Fine with me.
Okay. That's okay. Let's move on to number 11, which is a public hearing for the application of a special event liquor permit, Fremont Community Foundation. This is for June the 23rd in Centennial Park and Historic Trust Bridge, which is the Green Bridge. The public hearing is hereby open. Could I have a report from the city clerk, please? Am I rushing you?
And we may have a correction. That should be June 23rd and 24th.
Oh, and 24th, okay.
That's what we've got. I just have it wrong on the mayor's agenda, so.
I'm the last to know. That's the way it is.
Mayor, members of council, this is John Marietta and Don Schmidl. Boy, you guys caught me off guard here. Who represents the Fremont Community Foundation, who has applied to this council for a special event permit for June 23rd and 24th in Centennial Park, and also the Trust Bridge for their Whitewater Festival. Notice of this public hearing was given through posting in the location in the park. Activities include whitewater events, live music, as well as a fun zone for kids. There will be a variety of food and merchandise vendors here as well. Beer sales will stop at 11 p.m. on both days with security and cleanup allowed until midnight. As in the years past, a substantial beer garden has been designated by the organization beginning on the bridge over the river on the north side of the river to Griffin Avenue on the south, and extending from the eastern boundary of the park westerly to the other side of the playground equipment. That will change when we get the new park going. Alcohol sales and consumption will be limited to the fenced-in area. The substantial beer garden has been designed in order to provide the opportunity for both participants and spectators to consume alcoholic beverages while watching the events from the riverbank. All individuals will be checked at the entrances, and individuals age 21 and up will receive a wristband, and those under 21 will receive a black X on their hands. Many volunteers from the organizations have attended the training in the past and will provide security and enforcement assistance around the perimeter and patrolling the event. An on-site inspection of the premises will be conducted on the day of the event, and once all requirements of the inspection have been fulfilled, the permit would be issued. Upon review of the application, the appropriate fee has been completed, has been submitted. The diagram meets filing requirements. The applicant has obtained a park use permit, and the corporation is in good standing with the Secretary of State. So with that, I can open it up to any questions you may have of these two who represent the organization.
Questions, applicant?
Good evening, John and Don. John and Don.
Good evening. Thanks for having us.
Are you familiar with the Colorado Liquor Code?
We are.
Is there a copy of the liquor code on file with your organization?
There is.
How many volunteers do you plan on having for this event?
For the bar portion of this event, there's 30.
Probably 30 to 40 volunteers.
How will they be trained on the liquor code and liquor laws?
Our board members are trained with the City of Canyon City through their liquor training that's available, and then the board members train other volunteers at the bar.
Are you fully aware that you're responsible for compliance with the Colorado Liquor Code and that any violations of this code may be held against you and/or your organization as well as future licensing?
We are.
Tell us about your event.
This is the Royal Gorge Whitewater Festival. It's a partnership event, and the application alludes to it being a Fremont Community Foundation event, but it's in partnership with Canyon City Parks and Rec District, WKRP, which is Whitewater Kayak River Project. Well, that may not be close enough. Canyon City Chamber of Commerce, and this year we have a new partner with Canyon City High School ROTC department. They're going to be putting on the Adventure Run, formerly known as the War Race, which it may still be in some of our publications as a War Race. So a good event. It draws between 7,000 and 10,000 people, depending on the year, into right downtown Canyon City at Centennial Park. So we should have good water and hopefully not too much water, which has been a problem in the past. We either seem to have way too much or not nearly enough. So maybe this year's the happy medium. But invite everybody you know to come down and have a good time. One of our banner events for the year.
Any further questions of council? Ms. Meisner?
What kind of training are you doing with your volunteers to ensure that we're not over-serving any of the participants?
Training with the volunteers also includes supervision with the volunteers. And our goal is to have a board member present at the bars, or have former board members. We have a number of former board members that volunteer and help us with that to identify. And at any of these events, I don't care which event it is, if you want to talk about Blossom or any of the events, over-serving is a constant problem, and it's becoming harder to identify as the phenomenon of airplane bottles and shooters begin to show up and people smuggle those in. So in a lot of cases, it's not our staff that has done the over-serving, but it's people that have smuggled liquor in or have come from other places and may already be a little tipsy when they get there.
But more specifically, if an individual were to approach one of your servers that's beyond reasonable serving limitation, what process do you have in place to ensure that your server is not going to serve that individual?
Well, the server is supposed to deny the service. We always have DD defense security near the bars. So if that becomes a confrontation with the patron, then they're supposed to step in and ask the patron to leave. And I think it's more important, you always have a certain percentage of people that are going to drink too much. And what you do with them after you've identified that person is as important as not serving them. But we try to have our security people trained to where they make sure that they have family or friends there that will take care of them. We always try to offer free cab rides to a patron to go home. And so what happens after is as important as not serving.
One more question. What is your organization's policy in regards to allowing the servers to consume alcohol either before they're a server or during the time that they're serving?
We don't have a prohibition on the servers consuming. We do require that they do be sober during that period of time.
What is sober?
Well, we don't actually carry breath sticks or breathalyzers along in that, but you have to be coherent, you know. And we haven't really had an issue in the past with our servers becoming incapacitated to where they weren't coherent enough to be at the bar. So that hasn't really been an issue.
A reported issue.
Exactly. Well, there's always issues, right, Councilman Meisner, but what you try to do is identify them and mitigate the risk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Any other questions, council?
Yeah, I've got a more generic question, not specific to this. Just as a parent, I've always kind of objected to the whole idea of taking a permanent marker and putting a big black X on the back of my kids' hands. So why do we do that?
It's easier to identify. John can probably tell you more because he lives it when he's there. Is a lot of times those bands are transferable. That's what I hear from them, is a lot of times those bands, somebody will take them off and the kids will put them back on. It's kind of hard for them to wash that big black X off, and that's for a reason, is when they identify them. John, you want to go ahead and talk about this too, why you do that and stuff?
And part of this event has admission, so you pay at the gate to get in. So we have to be able to track who paid once they're inside. And if we do a band on a juvenile, then it's harder for the bar staff to decide which band's the appropriate band, particularly as we get older teenagers that may look to be of legal age but are not. And if there's multiple bands, it's easy to become confused. Which one's the admission band, which one's the drinking band? So by not having an admission band, by doing some kind of a mark, a stamp or an X on the back of a hand, it's easier for the bar staff to tell when they have a band, they know the color of the band and the design of the band for that day, and it's easier for them to identify the people that should be drinking. And it's also easier for my security people because they roam through the park and monitor who's consuming. And if they see someone, and this happens on a regular basis, they'll see somebody consuming and shouldn't be, and they'll escort them out.
They'll go ahead and pick up, if I'm drinking and I lay my cup down and I go off and say I leave the event, somebody that has a big black X, DD group will say, you've got a big black X on your hand, you shouldn't have alcohol. It's just more identifiable.
The other thing too is that, that at the street dance that I trained the staff, is you can't sell 2 beers to one person because you don't know where they're going with that beer. If you're gonna sell 2 beers, you have to have had 2 IDs or 2 wristbands. So they can't buy a beer for their underage girlfriend or whatever and go off.
Well, I know that's not enforced at the Whitewater Festival.
Well, this year it will be for sure.
On the band thing, what would happen? I mean, this is fairly simple. Green means yes, red means no. The kiddos get a red band, the adults get a green band.
Well, part of the problem is that you have other establishments like mine, the other ones down the street that band. Now, I tell my staff, I don't care what event it is, if they're banded and it's not the band that we're using that night, you have to still ID them. I don't care what band they have on their wrist. If it's not our band, you have to ID them.
Okay, well, I was just talking about for the alcohol, not necessarily the admission.
Well, and the
anyway.
simpler the band, the easier it is to counterfeit.
Yeah.
And
okay.
believe it or
All
not,
right.
these
No, I get it. Okay.
they're crafty and they're persistent.
The 10-year-olds know better about that than we do.
We've had one young man that's been known to us for 2 years that we've escorted out of the park at least 12 times over 4 days of events. So,
you're going to be 21 this year, so you don't have to deal with it?
well, he's gotten to the point now when security sees him coming in, they just trail him and know
He'll
that
be old
he's
enough
eventually-
soon,
yeah,
another
he's-
few years.
He's leaving
Yeah.
again pretty quick anyway. So.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions of council? Are there any comments from the audience that would like to approach? Okay, then I'm going to close the public hearing. Could I have a motion and second from council?
Mr. Mayor,
Ms. Schumacher?
I will make a motion, pardon me, that we approve the application for the special event liquor permit for the Fremont County Foundation for the Whitewater event at Centennial Park and the Historic Truss Bridge on June 24th, sorry.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that. Yeah.
Weed, second. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing and seeing none, could I have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Schumacher?
Aye.
Councilmember Weed?
Aye.
Councilmember Ekstrom?
Aye.
Councilmember Meisner?
Aye.
Councilmember Gill?
Aye.
Councilmember Smith?
Aye.
Approved by unanimous vote.
Okay, we're going to open another public hearing for the application for a special event liquor permit, Fremont Community Foundation, July the 29th in Veterans Park. Could I have the report from City Clerk, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Again, this is John Marietta, representing the foundation, who's applied for this liquor permit for July 29th in Veterans Park for the annual Fireman's Ball. Notice of the public hearing was given by posting the park This organization plans on hosting a family-style event that will include food, entertainment, auction, and games. This event is the only fundraising event held annually for the volunteer fire department. All proceeds will go toward assisting this volunteer organization with the purchase of gear and equipment. All individuals will be checked in at the entrances. Individuals 21 and up will receive a wristband, and those under 21 will receive the black X on their hands. Again, the volunteers have attended training, as in the previous application. An on-site inspection, again, will be done the day of the event, and once those requirements have been met and fulfilled, the permit would be issued. The fee has been submitted, the diagram meets filing requirements, and the applicant has obtained a park use permit, and of course, their corporation is in good standing. So with that, open it up to any questions you may have of the applicant.
Mr. Weed?
Thank you, Mayor. Hello, John.
Hi, Dennis. How are you this evening?
Are you familiar with the Colorado Liquor Code?
I am.
Is there a copy of the code on file with your organization?
There is.
How many volunteers do you plan on having for this event?
This event should have about 15 to 20 volunteers.
And how are they going to be trained on the liquor code?
They will be trained and are trained with the Canyon City training provided for the liquor code, and we have a number of the volunteer firemen that have been through that training as well.
Are you fully aware that you're responsible for compliance with the Colorado Liquor Code and that any violations of this code may be held against you and or your organization, as well as future licensing?
I am.
You want to tell us a little bit more about the event?
The volunteer firemen last year moved this event down to Veterans Park, kind of a change of venue, one of those rules that I've always held that about every 7 or 8 years you need to change your venue and change up the event or it goes stagnant. So last year was their first year down in Veterans Park. The weather wasn't particularly kind to them, so let's hope for good weather on July 29th. Typically that should be a good day. The volunteer firemen partner with us on this event. I think they're also going to have a 5K run that corresponds with this event in the morning. They'll have a number of fireman events and hose carries and some of those other kind of fireman things that they'll do. I would also encourage anybody that's watching that wants to become a volunteer fireman. I know that they are short-staffed and searching for new volunteers.
Thank you. Any further questions of council? Mr. Meisner?
I assume we're on the same page in regards to over-serving.
Yeah, we'll try to be diligent, Jim.
Thank you.
Okay, are there any comments from the audience at this time? And I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing, ask for a motion in a second.
Mayor,
Mr. Weed?
I will make the motion to approve the application for a special event liquor permit for the Fremont Community Foundation at Veterans Park, July 29th.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Schumacher, thank you. Any discussion on that motion? Would you call the roll, please?
Reed?
Aye.
Councilmember Schumacher?
Aye.
Councilmember Smith?
Aye.
Councilmember Ekstrom?
Aye.
Councilmember Gill?
Aye.
Councilmember Meisner?
Aye.
Approved by unanimous vote.
Okay, moving on to number 13, which is a public hearing for application for a special event liquor permit, Chamber of Commerce, June the 27th, July the 4th, July 25th, August 29th, and September 1st in Veterans Park. Of course, I'm opening up a public hearing at this time. I should have said that. Got a report from the city clerk.
Council, this is Dan Brown representing the Chamber, who has applied for 5 special liquor events for their entertainment and park events for their summer concerts. Notice of the public hearing was given by posting the location in the park. The Chamber has conducted a number of these events in the past few years, and there has never been a concern that's been brought to my attention. Alcohol sales at these events are being conducted as a fundraiser to celebrate another successful season of entertainment in the park. They will have a small beer garden in which alcohol will be served and consumed. The entire park will not be licensed for alcohol sales or consumption, as this is a family-friendly event. There will be only one point of entry where the IDs will be checked and by trained volunteers, and those of legal drinking age will receive a wristband. An on-site inspection of the premises will be conducted on each day, and once those requirements have been fulfilled, a permit would be issued each day of those individual events. Upon reviewing the application, the appropriate fees have been submitted, the diagram meets filing requirements, and the corporation is in good standing with the Secretary of State's office. One thing that I need to bring to the attention is the park use permits have not been turned in for all dates. Denise has gotten those, I think, talked to Chris about those. The only one we have right now that's been turned in and approved is July 4th. So we will get that rectified before we move on. So this would, if you approve this, would be subject that staff will follow through with those park use permits.
Thanks.
With that, you can open up to any questions you may have of the applicant.
Questions of the applicant? Mr. Weed?
Thank you, Mayor. Hi, Dan. Are you familiar with the Colorado Liquor Code?
Yes,
Is there a copy of the liquor code on file with your organization?
there is.
How many volunteers do you plan to have for this event?
These events are fairly small, not like what these other guys are doing out here, so they're much easier to control. So we'll probably have just 2 people delivering beer. They don't pour, they're in cans. So should be a pretty simple event. 2 people, Chris and a couple other volunteers will be up there taking care of it.
Okay, and I think I know the answer, but how will they be trained on the liquor code?
They have already been trained through the city, and I don't know how recent they have, but there is some training. I will be there at these events. I've had some training in the past.
Like a bicycle?
Yeah, kind of.
Yeah. Okay, are you fully aware that you're responsible for compliance with the Colorado Liquor Code and that any violations of this code may be held against you and or your organization as well as future licensing?
Yes.
All right, here's your 15 minutes of fame. I hope not 15.
Yeah, hopefully this is, no, it will not be 15 minutes. I think we got everything else cleared up, hopefully. If there's any more questions, you know, these events are tough. They're all a little bit tough. This one's a much easier event to put on. It's very controlled. It's only a couple hours long, not gigantic crowds like some of the other events. So should be a good one. Lisa, and thanks to Lisa, she lined up the bands for us this year, and it should be hopefully hopping on Tuesday nights.
Any questions, Council? Ms. Smith?
When is the first concert? Is it this week?
It is that tomorrow?
Or
Pardon?
time do the concerts
Oh, you're
start?
asking me tough questions. I'll ask, I do believe the concert starts at 6:30. And they're done by 9 o'clock.
That's a concert, but doesn't include this permit, correct?
Yeah, there's not a beer garden at the
No, not this one. Yeah, we don't have liquor license for every one of these events, just a few select ones. So every Tuesday, you're going to have entertainment in the park.
Is it the prospectors that'll be handling the alcohol
On this event,
on all of them?
on all of the prospectors will be there to help, yes. And they do it quite often. They do, they hold their once-a-month business after hours, and the prospectors have that license that they cover, and they always serve the alcohol there. So we'll have 1 or 2 prospectors at every one of these events.
Mr. Meisner? Question?
Are we on the same page in regards to over-serving?
Is that what you're talking to those guys about?
We can have the same discussion.
Oh, absolutely. Same. We wouldn't have to have it. We understand it very well.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I just wanted to point out that, if I remember right, I can't remember the exact number, but a really quite a large proportion of our citizens, according to the citizen survey, have participated in our city-sponsored events, and that would include these concerts at the park on Tuesday nights. And so it's a great way to bring together community for community pride and entertainment and quality of life, and hopefully bring people downtown and support our local vendors as well. So we thank the Chamber of Commerce for having these summer concerts, and thank you, Lisa, for setting up the bands for this summer.
Yeah, they are very important to any community. So I'm glad. Hopefully, you guys can make at least a couple of these things. The band at the end of the year is the Inman Brothers in August, and they played last week at the Balloon Fest, and they're hot. They're an exceptional band.
Okay, thank you, Dan. Any comments from the audience at this time? Then I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing and ask for a motion and second from council. Mr. Weed?
Mayor, members of council, I will make the motion to approve the application for a special event liquor permit for the Chamber of Commerce at Veterans Park on June 27th, July 4th, July 25th, August 29th, and September 1st, subject to application for and issuance of the appropriate use permit for the park.
Okay. Second?
Second.
Meisner, thank you. Any discussion on the motion? Not, call the roll, please.
Councilmember Weed.
Aye.
Councilmember Meisner.
Aye.
Councilmember Ekstrom.
Aye.
Councilmember Gill.
Aye.
Councilmember Smith.
Aye.
Councilmember Schumacher.
Aye.
Approved by unanimous vote.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Dan.
Thank you, Dan. All right, let's go back to step number 7. It's an ordinance, ordinance number 12, series 2017. This is the second reading. It's an ordinance codifying the ordinance number 19, the series 1994. Would you read by title, please?
This is a bill for ordinance number 12, series of 2017, an ordinance amending Chapter 5.30 of the Canyon City Municipal Code by the addition of a new Section 5.30.070 concerning distance restrictions for hotel, restaurant, liquor license establishments.
Could I have a motion and a second? Mr. Weed.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. I will make the motion to approve ordinance number 12, series of 2017 on second reading.
Mr. Gill, second. Any discussion on that motion?
Second. Oh, did you get a second?
Got it from Mr. Gill. That would be a third.
Dreaming.
Okay.
I'm behind tonight.
It's okay. Would you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Weed.
Aye.
Councilmember Gill.
Aye.
Councilmember Schumacher.
Aye.
Councilmember Ekstrom.
Aye.
Councilmember Smith.
Aye.
Councilmember Meisner.
Aye.
Approved by unanimous vote.
Thank you. Number 8, it's ordinance number 13, series 2017. This is, again, a second reading. It's an ordinance referring a ballot issue, a 10-year extension of the Tabor timeout. Could you call or read by title, please?
This is a bill for ordinance number 13, series of 2017, an ordinance referring a ballot issued to the registered electors of the city of Canyon City, providing for a 10-year Tabor timeout and the reestablishment of the city's district base at the conclusion of such 10-year timeout. Tabor timeout.
Any comments or questions from council? Mr. Meisner?
I'm not sure the process that we would follow, but two things from my viewpoint. I'd expressed concerns about the language in that original proposed ordinance, and our attorney firm provided us with some different options that
Yes.
my concern is that we need to try to communicate that this is what we're trying to do is we're trying to extend a current situation and not create a new one. And I don't know that the first verbiage clearly stated that. So I would ask that we consider changing the verbiage for the potential ballot. And then we also need to consider whether we want to table this ordinance for a little bit to give council some time to do some education. So I have two questions.
Ms. Smith?
Council's pretty limited on what kind of, how much education they can offer on Tabor, is that
Well,
right?
that limitation sets in when you set the ballot title, and this sets the ballot title. So I think what Councilmember Meisner is suggesting is to maybe table this till the second reading to another date, so you can kind of strategize as to how you want to public regarding this question.
As I understand it, once we do second reading, we're stuck in terms of the amount of information and communication that council can do relative to this.
Definitely limited.
Yeah, what's the deadline for setting it and still making the ballot?
August 8th. Somewhere, I think it's the first meeting in August, August 8th. I don't have a calendar in front of
Yeah,
me.
it's probably around that. Mid-August is usually when you enter into your IGA, right?
First reading would be the first meeting in August, but your second, could be your middle meeting in August. She's correct, it'd be the second meeting in August, because I'm going off that would be already read on the first reading.
Yeah, and with the Tabor notices, I think it's the beginning of September they have to go out. I think maybe mid-September, so you're going to want the question set for the county to send those notices out.
That would give us June, July, August, 2 months to.
I don't know that we need that much time, but I think we do need a couple of weeks for
Can you
Tony
bring-
or somebody to.
Can we have this brought back to us the first council meeting in July? July 3rd?
Can we address the verbiage now, or do we wait?
I
I
think
would
it-
wait until you actually bring it back for an action. Yeah.
That's a month, roughly.
So,
July 3rd?
what'd you say?
Well, I was going to say, I
Is
mean,
that
we
it?
could address the verbiage now, but not select it, and then.
We're going to have to cut. I did not realize there was a meeting on July 3rd, I guess.
Or you think that's a bad idea?
I think
Catherine?
the meeting on July 3rd is going to be a bad idea, period. the meeting as a whole. So let's table it further in the month first.
I would say, I would,
Okay.
I would agree.
A lot of us
I
will be
have
out
my
of town.
daughter and grandchild coming in that week.
I think it's fine if you want to just discuss the verbiage and options, but then make the final decision when it comes back, to answer your question.
They don't table it on July 3rd, then they're going to have to table it till July 17th.
So let's table this till July 17th, but let's revisit the verbiage. So given the three options that were sent to us earlier in this week, did you have an favorite?
Well, I like option number 3 for its simplicity in terms of trying to explain as much as we can in layman's terms, but also addressing the legalities that we have to do. I don't know how else to say that.
I preferred option 2, it's only got like 3 words difference.
And those 3 words, I think, are a good arguing point.
Okay, so, and option 3 was pretty much the same, so I could support option 3.
I could support
Any
option 3.
difficulty.
I kind of like 3.
So
Put it out, Scott.
didn't you have an opinion on your favorite?
Me?
Yes. I'm trying to remember your opinion here.
All we said was that the language that's in the question now is the traditional Tabor language. There's no set requirements for Tabor language. It's part of the problems with Tabor, is this kind of been this feeling around in the dark for the right language, trying to convey what's going on in the simplest of terms without being too verbose to because it's one sentence basically, right? It's one sentence with a question mark at the end. So I don't have a favorite of the 3. It's really up to you guys how you think it best communicates what you're trying to do to your voters.
And I think 2 and 3 very clearly and succinctly state, without loading it up with a bunch of confusing language.
If I step away from council in my previous role, then I come back and say, regardless of source, what does that mean?
Yeah.
And that's another point of argument or discussion, that we're not trying to cloud anybody, we're not trying to blow smoke. We're just realistically trying to extend Tabor. And I think 3 does that with the least amount of confusing verbiage.
I'm good with it.
I agree with that.
So do you want to go ahead and agree on 3 tonight? And then, no?
No, we'll give you a revised.
Yeah,
Okay.
we'll revisit this. But we've given her some direction.
We will bring it back in the second meeting of July. Mr. Meisner?
Mayor and council, I move that we postpone Ordinance 13, series of 2017 to the July 17th meeting.
Second.
Okay, motion's been made to table till the July 17th meeting. Does everybody understand that motion? And it's seconded. Any discussion? None? Would you call the roll, please?
Meisner?
Aye.
Councilmember Weed?
Aye.
Councilmember Ekstrom?
Aye.
Councilmember Smith?
Aye.
Councilmember Schumacher?
Aye.
Councilmember Gill?
Aye.
Approved by unanimous vote.
Okay, moving on to number 9, it's resolution number 14, 2017. It's initiating the design phase for the U.S. Highway 50 pedestrian crossing as recommended by the Vision Committee. Could I have comments and questions from council?
Mr. Mayor,
Smith?
I move that we approve resolution number 14, 2017.
Second.
Thought we were on 9.
We're on 9. Number 14.
Oh, I'm sorry, my bad.
Okay.
Still second.
Mr. Weed has second, as he has insisted. Any discussion on that motion? Mr. Meisner?
Just quickly, I don't know that everybody's had a chance to read this, but in concerns that we had, the last whereas is, whereas construction of the preferred alternative will not begin until an access management plan has been adopted by City Council, and that's what we talked about, is that this plan would be subject to council approval in terms of those.
And the open reasoning for that is so that we can take a look at it and see the impact on the retail businesses that are along Highway 50 with the input of the people who operate those businesses and such. So it was our concern that we wanted to make sure that everybody had their input and it was the best plan for everybody.
Mayor, I have a question. Adam, on number 2, it says that you're going to develop an access management plan in which each property owner will be contacted and impacts discussed. How traditionally, or how well in this instance, will those property owners be contacted? Will it be by a certified letter or face-to-face conversation?
Face-to-face.
Okay, that's what I was hoping to hear. And the only other thing I wanted to add in there, I know in some of the writing here it talked about consideration to other plans that are being implemented. And I wanted in particular to make sure that in our consideration for pedestrian crossing to take into consideration the Arkansas River Plan in the crossing at 3rd Street, where we were connecting Centennial Park to a potential plaza on 3rd Street, and that was kind of like a golden, yellow brick road that could make that connection, and maybe looking forward into the future as we have a crossing at 3rd Street, if maybe we could have that vision towards the future included in that crossing at that time. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and that was one of the reasons why the committee landed where they did, because there were a lot of those unknowns still for some of those other types of crossing improvements we talked about. So this is really focusing on the uncontrolled crossings right now.
Mr. Meister.
Adam and I had a discussion, or Adam and Tony or somebody, but because of the length of that discussion, we never got into option 4, alternative 4. There was a heated discussion or opinionated discussion about the value and the impact of medians on the speed of traffic. Particularly when you look at entrance from the west side, if in fact the medians can have that kind of an impact on slowing traffic, then I would think we at least would want to consider maybe having a median that covered, correct me if I'm wrong, 1st to 3rd. That median would have minimal impact on people. And if in fact a median could have the effect of slowing traffic, it could be significant. And apparently that was option 4 or something like that we never got a chance to see in that whole proposal.
That's right. That's one of the locations that we selected, at least preliminarily, to look at for a crossing, because we also know that people use the City Hall parking lot for events in Veterans Park. And actually one of our, some of our accident history is in that block. So we expanded the area of the original scope. The original scope was from 3rd Street to 9th, and we went a little beyond 3rd Street to capture that concept. So in the design process, we will be looking at that.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Any other comments? Good. We have Shirley Squire. Did you ask to want to comment? We have a written request to comment by Shirley Squire.
Thank you very much, Mayor. I appreciate the fact that I can talk to you for a few minutes about this. I apologize for not being here the last meeting when we went with the Vision Committee. My granddaughter graduated from high school in South Carolina, so I felt the obligation to my family, and unfortunately for this situation, I put them in front of my commitments to Canyon City. So I do apologize for not being here. But I want to thank Adam Lancaster for sharing the video that he took of the Vision Committee meeting. And so I was able to view that. And after viewing it, I felt compelled to at least address a couple of issues that was presented during the Vision Committee meeting. There was a gentleman here from Durango, and he previously from Durango, living here in Canyon City, and he brought up the fact that Durango was quite parallel to us in some of the things that we're undertaking. And he mentioned that they had put in medians like we were suggesting with the committee, but then after the fact, they found out that they had to remove some of the medians because there was a problem. And they were also looking at an underground sort of a tunnel that would allow for pedestrian crossing and bicycling. My suggestion is that we are right in that process right now of looking at the medians, and I would suggest that maybe we collaborate or do a liaison thing with Durango and look at the spot that we're at right now and say, where did you guys go wrong that you put the medians in and now you're taking them out? So maybe we could learn from their mistakes, and as we plan this process, try to figure out where they went wrong and what we can do in meeting with the business owners to prevent that from happening here in Canyon. So it's just a thought, and I just thought I'd bring that up. The other thing I felt compelled to talk about was the underground pass that we were talking about. I just want to make it perfectly clear here that I attended all 3 of the different committees, their open house, including ours, and with only one exception, and that's Councilman Ekstrom, we never heard a positive thing about the tunnel. I can't tell you how many people talk to us, merchants, regular people here from Canyon City, that do not want that underground tunnel for a bypass. They're worried about vandalism, they're worried about the homeless camping there, they're worried about safety, and so I just felt, it didn't sound like it came out at that meeting, but I just wanted to emphasize that because so many people talked to us about that and were very concerned about it. And I didn't think that we really addressed that at that meeting. And I want to thank Councilman Meisner for adding that clause into the proposal. I think for the committee, we were always afraid that something might come up and overturn what we were suggesting, but by adding that one clause in there, the approval of the city council, I think you solidified it for me and for other committee members that you would be listening to what was being proposed, and what I heard from you today was that you were very concerned about the business and the access to those businesses. And so I'm really, really thrilled to be here to thank you for doing that, because I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Dr. Squire. Thank you.
Your comments.
Thank you.
Thank you. Dave twisted my arm.
Do we have any others? Okay. Thank you. We are discussing the motion. We discussed the motion. We have a motion and a second then. So would you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Smith?
Aye.
Councilmember Weed?
Aye.
Councilmember Ekstrom?
Aye.
Councilmember Meisner?
Aye.
Councilmember Gill?
Aye.
Councilmember Schumacher?
Aye.
Approved by unanimous vote.
Okay, step number 10 is resolution number 15, 2017. It's adoption of a public art policy. Could I have a report from the city administrator, please?
Yes, Mayor and Council. As you know, since 2010, the city's had a public arts policy working with the Arts Council, and it's, I think, helped invigorate downtown and added, a significant cultural asset to the community. Building upon that success, meeting with members of the Arts Council and the staff and looking at examples nationally, we're proposing something slightly different. Public art, but driven by community engagement, because most of the art, whether it's been in Canyon City or in other locations, has generally been designed by professional artists. We think there should be an opportunity for members of the community, whether it be schools, service clubs, churches, businesses, they have an opportunity in putting together public art exhibits. What we're proposing is a community engagement process in which we would purchase molds for 8 dinosaurs and 2 bighorn sheep, because those are largely indigenous and characteristic of this region of Colorado. And it would help encourage the civic involvement in the arts, which we believe really helps celebrate and honor the community and underscore its heritage and history and character and identity. Enhance, again, the community identity, increase accessibility to the arts, and allow for a variety of artistic styles. In general, we would like a theme that would be more whimsical than some of the professional art. Not that that's not good, but I think to make it more fun for the community. I think we've provided you pictures, particularly in Pittsburgh, of very attractive but whimsical public art there. They use dinosaurs as their canvas. To that end, what we would propose is the council would appropriate $15,000 from the economic development budget for these moles. They take about 6 to 8 weeks for delivery, so we would anticipate if we made that order this week, we'd probably have those cast by near midsummer. School will be back in session. We want to solicit, again, schools, community organizations, churches, businesses to participate. The committee would be engaged. It would be a 7-member. There's an error here where it says 6, but 3 members from the Arts Council, 2 from staff, 2 from the general community that the council would appoint after solicitation by the city clerk, and provide for public outreach, make people truly understand what the purpose is here and what the guidelines are, but make it simple so community groups can participate. A simple written proposal with some pictures, for example, why the art should be displayed, where it might be located. Recognize that it's also going to be city-owned. It's not going to be owned by anyone but the people of Canyon City. We'll be looking at aesthetic values, consistency with the theme that we desire, diversity of style, creativity, things of that nature. And then based upon that, we would recommend to the city council who the first 10 recipients of these opportunities should be. So that should be probably early fall, and then assist those facilities in the installation and insurance of that art, just as we do today with the other public art in the downtown. We would hope that most of these pieces would be up for 2 to 4 years, and then when they were decommissioned, which we found from other jurisdictions, a lot of people like to buy this artwork, so that would be a source of revenue to continue to stimulate this opportunity. We also have been already approached in proposing this from private companies that would like to buy their own moles, which certainly, we could entertain if you wish. That we want to make it clear that community groups such as churches and schools and other organizations, they should be able to compete for complimentary moles from the city. And then we have a list here of 21 locations. It's not exhaustive, but I think it's representative of the type of visible public areas, whether it be parks, downtown, US 50, the Royal Gorge Park, where these figures could be displayed and help generate, both cultural tourism, but a clear identity and pride for Canyon City.
Any comments or questions from council? Has everybody had an opportunity to see the examples, the pictures and all?
I guess I would like to make a comment.
Mr. Meisner.
I would like to compliment Rob in your ongoing efforts to get this project going through the committee. Your efforts, and then in conjunction with Tony's efforts of seeing Rob's light of what this project could do in terms of a nice little neat enhancement for the community. And Rob's done some good work on this whole thing. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay. Any other comments from council? Ms. Smith?
I was going to suggest adding to your list of possible locations is where the Gold Belt kiosk is going to be going on the east side of town might be a good location. And maybe some of these other outlying locations, if they were chosen, such as the Royal Gorge Park, maybe having a similar kiosk at those areas as well, since it might be a draw, that also be an opportunity to showcase other places to visit in Canyon City as well.
I suspect with these 10 plus interest by some private companies, we could have well over a dozen by this fall located throughout the community. And I have no doubt that will create a lot of interest and enthusiasm by both residents and visitors to the community.
Do you anticipate how often these dinosaurs will need to be either repainted, or how long are they going to last and still look professional?
Yeah,
and
we've talked to other communities, with the exception of graffiti, which usually doesn't happen. One thing even graffiti artists respect is other art. They may tag other buildings, facilities, but they tend to leave public art alone. So I think we should be in pretty good shape. But it will be a requirement of every group that gets selected. They have to maintain their work of art, whether that's cleaning off bird doo or graffiti. They're responsible, not the city. They have to tend to it and take care of it. But looking at the history of other communities, for example, Chicago did cows, Seattle did pigs, Toronto did moose. I think Jim was just talking to me about North Dakota. They've just done buffalo. And historically, the public has really appreciated and protected those works of art. What's different about our approach is that we're focusing on members of the general community, not professional artists, that the works will be up much longer than most jurisdictions, and we'd like this program to just continue, and not just be a one-off, but continue for a long time and multiply. And I think it will be a lot of fun.
What about the normal wear and tear? You know, so that if they start looking aged and...
Well, again, that's why we suggest to have them out there only between 2 and 4 years. We're going to find out, given our weather conditions, particularly the UV rays will be the biggest issue. We have a lot of sunshine here, more than most people, so we'll keep an eye on that. The good news, these molds are relatively inexpensive. They're between $1,000 and $1,500, so if they have to be replaced, we can do that. I think we'll create a lot of interest to replace them, but at least initially, we'd like them up much longer than most communities and see how they weather. We know the molds are durable. It's a question of how the paint, and usually people are using exterior acrylic paints on these, but you've seen from the examples, everything from glass to toys, to every potential medium is used to decorate these dinosaurs and these bighorn sheep. So we'll learn from time, but in general, I think we're going to be satisfied with their duration.
The other thing that you could see is actually some commercialization of this where some businesses are actually going to buy their own dinosaur and decorate it in accordance with their corporate colors. I mean, that's some of the stuff that you see in Texas and North Dakota and stuff.
The one prohibition we do have is there will be no text allowed on any of these figures. So it doesn't become a commercial. We don't get into First Amendment right issues. This is artwork, but without any text.
Be any plaques identifying who is responsible for the artwork in the maintenance?
Yes, every one of these will have a recognition plaque indicating who produced this work.
I do have a question on the committee.
Yep.
You have 3 individuals from the Art Council.
Yes.
What is that?
Do we have an art council?
What is that?
Well, I know we have some vacancies, but I believe in talking to Rob, I think there are 4 current members. You know, Rob is ex officio, so I think we'll have the majority continue to provide input. Rob's been a really critical asset in providing direction here and an overall cheerleading role. And then we'll just solicit several members of the community and some of the staff. We're trying to keep this as minimally bureaucratic as possible, keep it fun, and ultimately the council selects who's going to get these opportunities and where they're going to be located, not the committee. They're simply a process-driven entity that will bring to you the final decision-making.
Okay. Any more comments, council? Hearing none, could I have a motion and a second at this time?
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion that we, pardon me, I'm going to do it again, that we approve resolution number 15-2017, adopting a public art policy.
Mr. Meisner, second.
Second.
Any discussion on that motion? Hearing none, would you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Schumacher.
Aye.
Councilmember Meisner.
Aye.
Councilmember Gill.
Aye.
Councilmember Weed.
Aye.
Councilmember Ekstrom.
Aye.
Councilmember Smith.
Aye.
Approved by unanimous vote.
Okay, number 14 is, number 14 is ordinance number 14, a series of 2017. This is the first reading. It's an ordinance increasing the compensation for the mayor and members of city council. I will need 3 to introduce.
Prior to introduction, I need to know which version somebody is introducing.
Okay, Mr. Weed. And
That sounds like an opportunity
need-
for some conversation.
I need 2 more.
It's,
I need 2 more.
Which one am I, which one am I
Depends on which one he's
introducing?
choosing.
yeah, it's, we have to, so, when I was looking this over, there's 2 options. I'm actually gonna propose a third one. There's, right now, the ratio between council pay and mayor pay is mayor gets 50% more than the council members. I think that's a good formula, and I think we ought to stick with it. So the other thing is, it's been 18 years since the last time there was an adjustment in council pay. And if we used, I think Harry or Finance Department went through and figured out, based on Consumer Price Index increases over those 18 years, what it would be today. If we use those numbers, we're starting at even and we'll immediately fall behind. And so I think it's prudent to pick a number that is greater than that, which just brings it up to date, because otherwise that up-to-date number will immediately be out of date. And so my proposal would be to stick with the 6,000, or the 6,000 we had proposed for the council members, and and then use that 1.5 formula so to make the mayor's pay 9,000. So it would be $750 per month for the mayor and $500 per month for council members.
And this is going for the next person that are elected. It's
Right.
not the people that are currently sitting
Correct.
on
We are
council or
not-
mayor.
We are not giving ourselves a raise.
Thank you.
I have a question pursuant to this, getting it up with inflation cost and not getting behind. Is it possible to have the language where we go up to, considering inflation, do the 5,400, but have that increase annually based on, what is it, usually the 3% increase every year?
Has to be an ordinance, yeah. You have to increase it by ordinance, so.
And it has to be an exact dollar amount, not a percentage or, okay.
And typically, Dennis, the reason is because it gets kicked down the road every year, right? It's just the
Yeah.
current council just doesn't deal with it because it doesn't really affect them. It's the next council, right?
And-
So I'm with Dennis on, and I'm okay with the 6,000 for council and 9,000 for mayor based on that.
Okay, then I need three to introduce, which would be Mr. Weed, Mr. Ekstrom, and Mr. Meisner to introduce. Would you clerk read by title with the amounts that Mr. Weed had recommended?
The bill for ordinance number 14, series of 2017, an ordinance increasing the compensation of the mayor and other members of council to insert $6,000 for the council members and $9,000 for the mayor.
Do we need a report from?
So who introduced that?
Mr. Weed, Mr. Ekstrom, and Mr. Meisner introduced. And at this point, do we need a report from the city administrator? Or have we, I don't think we need that.
Heard from me.
We've heard. It's our idea, okay.
Is
Any
that
other?
annually or monthly?
Okay.
Maybe a clarification should probably mention since our last conversation was that this is really not because we want to have more money. It's for this future people that so many of you lose money. Is to compensate how much you're losing from the time that it's taking from your regular jobs. And hopefully to recruit good people to come and run for office so they won't be deterred because of that cost. Yeah, even better than us.
Better people.
A lot of evenings and a lot of banquets and stuff and things of that nature. Any more comments from council? Hearing none, could we have a motion and a second? Mr. Weed.
Thank you, Mayor. Members of council, I'll make the motion to approve ordinance number 14, series of 2017 on first reading.
Second.
Schumacher. Any discussion on that motion? Hearing none, would you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Weed?
Aye.
Councilmember Schumacher?
Aye.
Councilmember Gill?
Aye.
Councilmember Meisner?
Aye.
Councilmember Smith?
Aye.
Councilmember Ekstrom?
Aye.
Approved by unanimous vote.
Okay, number 15 was to appoint Building Code Committee. That's off the agenda? Do we have someone that want to speak tonight, or? No? Okay. Okay. Number 16, clarification/delegation of responsibilities, Community Development Department. A report from the Community Development Director. That's Dina. Welcome.
Good evening, Mayor and members of
evening.
council. I will introduce, is this on? A little closer. I will introduce myself for members of the public that are here or potentially listening. Dina Zvetlik, I am the Community Development Director for the city. So this agenda item is specifically on clarification and delegation of responsibilities. And so it's 3 separate ordinances that are being brought forward this evening. And they're really about ensuring the health, safety, and welfare of those residing in residential structures. It's about proceeding with enforcement of building standards for residential structures, and in the absence of a full-time building official currently, that's the reason for these 3 separate ordinances. And so each of those cover, first of all, the building inspector may act and fulfill all the duties of the building official under the currently adopted International Residential Code, or IRC. The second one addresses that the building inspector and the code enforcement officers working cooperatively as necessary may act and fulfill all the duties of the building official under the currently adopted Uniform Code for the Abatement of Dangerous Structures. And the third item is the code enforcement officers may order the cutting, trimming, or removal of weeds on any land and an assessment of those costs per the current code. So basically, we're bringing these forward for a couple of reasons. It may be items that, as mentioned in the staff comments, are fulfilling and supporting elements within the strategic plan, and there's 3 specific ones that are outlined in your memo this evening. And this is really about complying with sort of allowing people to do what's in their job description. It might be something that is a council directive, as I mentioned, something that's mentioned and supportive of the strategic plan. And in my mind, this is really about giving the authority to do things that the responsibility has already been given to an individual or to a staff member. So it's really providing the authority as a follow-up to the responsibility that's already given to somebody. So the city administrator had approved a designee authorization as a short-term gap to this last week. So this is now making this permanent through these 3 individual ordinances this evening. And I guess I will, just to finalize, make sure that everybody is still very clear that all commercial reviews will still be done by our outside consultant, which is currently Colorado Code Consulting based in Denver. They're still providing all commercial reviews as they have a certified building official.
I read over this. I read this twice, Dina, and I don't get it, to be honest with you. Are you saying that we have people that don't have authority to do something? Explain this.
So I guess one example that came up recently is there's an ordinance within the city in terms of weed abatement. And right now, the code enforcement officers can notice a property that their weeds are a nuisance, but they don't have the authority to actually then follow through and order the abatement. That abatement, currently the way the code is written, has to be signed off of every time by the city administrator. So this is simply trying to simplify that and allowing code enforcement officers to not only notice the properties, but then if they don't follow through, to also order the abatement of the property, rather than always having that go through to the city administrator.
How does that track with the building inspector?
That is, the building inspector would not be, or building official would not be involved with anything like that. That would be through code enforcement.
Okay, let's move from weeds then and move on to building inspector.
Sure.
How does that track with them? Are they not, can they tell you something's wrong with your building, but they can't do anything about it? Is that what you're saying?
So it's, I guess a way to summarize it is currently the term building official is used sort of at length within the current code. And so we're modifying, where appropriate, the term building official to delegate responsibility to the building inspector or a code enforcement officer.
And all this requires an ordinance? Seems a little heavy-handed to me. I'm just uncomfortable with making ordinances like this that I think you've covered it here in your letter. Isn't that good enough? I mean, we're creating ordinances.
Yep, and this might be a good opportunity for our city attorney to add in.
So the memo was just, as Dina said, just a short-term measure. You need to amend your code to allow this to be a more permanent situation. And so what these code revisions do is they give your city administrator the authority to actually do what he did in the memo, because he doesn't really have authority to do that. I mean, I asked for this to come immediately to council because I didn't want what he's written in that memo to be challenged. So he doesn't even have current authority under the code to do what that memo says.
Who's challenging? Who would challenge it?
If we brought an enforcement action, we could get challenged on the fact that the person bringing the action, the person who ordered the action, didn't have authority to do it.
Okay.
So we don't want to, we don't want to deal with that issue. We want to just proceed with enforcement.
And it seemed to me that since in this particular case with the building inspector, chief building inspector, would that change when we have one, or would it not?
It's the building official versus the building inspector. So currently, the city does not have an on-staff building official. We have 2 building inspectors.
And what happens, are we not then going to pursue an on-staff building inspector?
Building official.
Official.
We are, and that is in process, and that person is going through a training which is a lengthy training process.
When that occurs, then this is no longer necessary?
No. So the way that it's worded now, it says the building official is the enforcement individual for the codes for both dangerous abatement of dangerous buildings and the IRC, and only in the absence of a building official does the city administrator designate. So once that building official is in place, the building official will just take over. But this allows flexibility down the line. If you ever lose your building official again, you can take measures to address that in the interim.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, sir.
It seems like right now that there's a first line of defense and then there is a secondary opinion that's brought to the table before enforcement action is actually taken. Is that understood? Am I understanding this right? Like right now, code enforcement can go out and do their job and summons or notice a particular address. But in order for that to be acted on a legal basis, it has to be signed off on by our city administrator. Is that the way it is right now?
Well, or the building official.
Okay.
And since we don't have a building official is why we're presenting these 3 ordinances.
Okay.
So we're allowing other staff members with different titles to actually go through and enforce outside of the building official in the absence of a building official.
One thing that I really like is, if it's clear in my mind, that there's 2 levels. There's somebody that goes out and notices, says, hey, y'all are messing up. And then somebody else has to look at it and say, I think they're messing up too. Rather than somebody just saying, hey, I think you're messing up and here you go, bye-bye. Does that make sense?
Yeah, well, the
On
question.
a check and balance.
Correct.
Yeah, we would agree with that, but there are different thresholds. For example, someone shouldn't have to come to me if they want to abate weeds. Now, they should have to come to me, and they do if they're abating an entire property. Let's take the Jordan matter or the Dahl matter. Those are very complex abatement properties. I'm definitely involved with those, but I am not involved and shouldn't be involved in day-to-day kind of maintenance, inspections, and actions.
Okay, but a building official would be, and that would be more in his
or her
there, yeah.
Or the building official can delegate in certain circumstances, but we don't have a building official
right now
to delegate.
Yeah, but I would really like to see something just personally where there's not just one person going in and doing it before anything is abated or any money is spent or any action is taken against the property owner. I would like to have a second level to say, yes, I agree with you, rather than somebody just saying, hey, it's my opinion and here we go, bye-bye.
Sorry.
My question is, I mean, I think maybe that second level's there. Before you can proceed to abatement, don't you have to go through the municipal court? Isn't there a summons issued for code violations?
There's different levels of abatement, so I would refer to the city attorney on that.
Yeah, but it's going to involve both your city administrator and either our office or your prosecutor to take it up to like either a criminal matter or to get the order of abatement, like the properties that Tony was discussing. Those are getting flushed through a lot of levels of staff. So.
Well, yeah, we'll be real specific. Let's talk about the weed notice I got that said I was going to get a summons if I didn't cut weeds. And so if I decided I wasn't going to cut those weeds, you can't just come in and cut them for me. Don't you have to deal with the summons first, which would take it through the court? So there is a second level of opinion built into this. I mean, you can't just
if someone
say,
doesn't comply,
I mean, it's not simply cut your weeds or we're going to come cut them. It's cut your weeds or you're going to get a summons and you're going to go to court. And then if you get if the city gets a favorable ruling, then we're going to come in and cut your weeds for you if you don't do it.
Yeah, there's a due process.
That I like.
Yeah, we can't
that addresses my concern. Yes.
Yeah.
That addresses mine too. Pardon?
Now, in over 95% of these cases is voluntary compliance. We never rise to that level. When we do, people like myself, city attorney, department level directors would get involved. But in 95% of these cases, they're pretty straightforward. People comply voluntarily. There's a non-issue.
Then I had on number 16, whereas we're talking about the Uniform Code for the Abatement of Dangerous Buildings. Not sure I knew that existed, but it does, apparently. It says the city desires to authorize the city administrator to appoint other officials to perform the duties and obligations under the UCADB in the absence of, whose other officials? Who would you appoint?
Building inspector.
It says in the absence of building official.
Yes. We right now do not
She is a bit, no,
She's
not.
an inspector. She's not the official.
She's going through the process of becoming the chief building official through certification programs, but that'll take at least a year. So in the interim, that's why we want this language to give her the authority to do her job. She knows her job. She doesn't have the official certification.
That says that here? I mean, that says that here?
That she knows her job?
No.
Oh.
No.
Yeah, so
It's, what troubles me a little bit is are other officials, could that be, who else could that be? Is it just the building department people?
And code enforcement.
And code enforcement.
In relation to that code specifically, it
Yeah.
would be both those departments.
Should that say that in here specifically?
It does. It says
Okay.
building officials and the code enforcement officers would have the authority to adopt and implement the Uniform Code for Abatement of Dangerous Buildings.
Right, then it goes on to say the city administrator and desires, whereas the city, okay, well.
And they're doing that today. I mean, they're working hand in hand to correct these more complex abatement cases.
Okay. I'm just not totally comfortable with it for some odd reason, but.
Part of the problem, just my own experience, having managed 7 other cities, is this city charter, and John Havens told me this when I started, is the most prescriptive city charter probably in the state of Colorado. And it really mitigates your home rule authority. It's over prescriptive. And that, that's all, and we've talked about charter reform. This charter could use a major overhaul.
Over-prescriptive in what fashion?
Excuse me?
Over-prescriptive in what fashion?
Well, this
You
is a
brought it
good
up.
example. When a charter actually specifies who can do what, generally charters will delegate to the city manager the authority to conduct the business of the city, to implement laws, carry out programs. This charter goes into finite detail about who can do what and what they can or can't do across the board, not just with me, city council, finance director. I mean, I could go down the litany, and John was very critical about that when I came here. I said, well, we just got to live with it. because, as you well know, it requires a vote of the public for every measure you want to change. We don't have enough time to ever accomplish that end. Hopefully, there's some significant things that ultimately the public will be willing to consider, but, I mean, it was by design. It wasn't an accident. It was a charter designed during an era where there was, and maybe still, tremendous distrust of government, and effectively tried to handcuff the authority of the people in that government.
Yeah, a good example of that was the increasing the non-bid limit, the spending limit before you had to go out for bids, and that took years.
$500 prior to the change.
And
Now
that was
it's
$500 in
6,500.
1948 or something.
Yeah.
And
We had to send that to the vote of the people.
Well, but this is, it's a monetary thing. This is decidedly different.
So, Mayor, there's 3 here in front of us tonight, and if we were to go through each one and take care of any questions or concerns that council might have, starting with number 15, it talks about basically appointing our current building inspector as the chief official. So that would allow her to come in and do her job without having everything to go to Tony's desk. So that's the first one here. Or is there anything that you're uncomfortable with?
And just to clarify, that's only under the International Residential Code that authority would be given.
Does she do that now? She doesn't do that now, does she? Does she bring all building permits
That's
to you and
the
everything
problem.
else?
Technically, because of the way the charter is written, she's not the chief building official, and it specifies that's the person. That's why we're bringing this to you. To play it safe, we've had a lot of stuff signed off by our firm in Denver. That gets expensive at $117 an hour. Kathy is very qualified to review and approve residential plans and inspections, and that's why I want to delegate this authority and make sure it's consistent with the charter. On commercial projects, as we've indicated, we will still have the Denver firm do that. But ultimately, she'll be able to do that once she meets all her certifications, hopefully within a year.
Is it true that she was doing that under Greg's authority
Yes.
as a building official, but now that Greg's gone, technically she doesn't have that authority anymore? So puts her back into having that legal authority to do that under the.
Because ultimately it fell back onto Tony because we didn't have an official. So it fell back on the Tony, and now Tony's asking us to give it back to her.
I couldn't build a doghouse. You do not want
And
me
then-
reviewing plans.
That's
And
a
as this is
given.
an ordinance, we can come
You're
back
just
and
in
change
it.
this anytime we want, right?
Yeah.
Right, Mayor? We can
What?
since it's an ordinance, we can come back and change this if we don't like it anytime we want.
Yeah, this effectively is a stopgap measure.
When it hits the fan, though, we don't realize it's out there. Now all of a sudden it's a little too late to change it at that time. Okay, go on.
And then number 16.
Are we going to go through 15 and get
Yeah, I
3 to
just wanna-
introduce and all that?
just so that we're clear on each of them, because again, I spoke with the mayor a little bit earlier today regarding this, and this is the first time that most of us have seen this. So it's really
Haven't had an
important that we go
opportunity
through.
to have
Yeah.
discussion.
So number 16 then is, again, now we're specifically talking about dangerous buildings. And that's where we, if we have a problem out there, our building inspector is able to go out and inspect it and say, yes, this is a dangerous building. I'm not sure if that necessarily is going to take care of that stopgap measure. What is, what kind of
Has to go to the
authority are we
courts.
giving her? Let's play devil's advocate. What kind of authority are we giving her if someone comes and says, hey, this dog shed that you built isn't safe for a dog?
Well, there's extensive legal process. This is just the first step, giving her the authority to designate properties as dangerous, need for abatement. But as you know from some of the cases we've just handled in the last 6 months, it's a long legal process. So this is just the first step in a long road to actually abate a property. So this would not be the first and last action by the city. This just initiates that action. You have attorneys involved, you have higher level city staff involved. Again, the Dahl case, the Jordan case are classic illustrations of that. They're very time consuming and complex and require a lot of parties to be involved in that. Her role here and the code enforcement role would just be to initiate that process. And they're involved with the supervision of these cases.
Abandoned homes also, the fire chief is often involved in determining the dangerous status of a building as well.
And he has authority under the fire code go in and inspect buildings. But to answer your question a little more specifically, it gives her the right to go onto the property, ask the person if there's someone living there, say, can I come inside to inspect the structural framing of the building and if it's dangerous or not, if it's safe for human habitation. This also would allow code enforcement officers to investigate whether there's access to sewer, access to water, things that are in that code that allow it to be unsanitary, and then for us to proceed legally. So,
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Mr. Meisner.
my concern is the vagueness, and I realize you want vagueness for flexibility. But I would ask that you remove those terminologies or verbiage where we talk about other individuals and name specific positions. In other words, that the city administrator could appoint the building inspector in lieu of the building official and make that clean cut so we all know exactly who we're talking about versus the janitor, which in all technicality you could do.
the last whereas you're talking about?
Well, any of those where it talks about appointment, where it talks about that the city administrator may appoint other individuals, why can't that say the building administrator may appoint the building inspector to perform the duties and obligations of the building official? I mean, that's
That'd be fine.
specifically what we're talking about.
Sure.
So why not have that language in there? We've got a very high level of trust with you. I don't know that that would exist if you were to leave tomorrow.
Yeah, we'll be fine with that.
That would need to be changed, in my opinion, in a couple of spots, where we specifically state the position, if Deanne's okay with that. Is there a complication with naming who we're going to replace or who we're going to delegate?
No, the only suggestion I would have under ordinance number 16 is to state both building inspector and/or code enforcement officer.
Right. And the same way on 15, you would need to name a specific title in our 103.2 appointment.
Well,
That one,
what we did there was a little bit different. The official has to meet the qualifications of a building inspector, which are specified under the International Building Code. They're very specific about what that person, the qualifications that person has to have. So you can't just appoint anybody. They have to meet the qualifications, and that's been adopted previously by the city, those qualifications. That they're provided that the appointed individual at the very last
Or
sentence.
individuals meet qualifications of a building inspector.
All right, if you got to do that, but I still don't understand why you can't say building inspector. I mean, you come back and tie it in anyways.
We can't, that's fine. That's fine.
Okay. And that was my concern. I just thought there was the vagueness, and I'm just concerned about an overreaching bureaucracy. I like you guys, but not that much. Okay. Okay.
Are we done with 16?
Yeah, and I think 17 just speaks for itself. We, with the weeds,
That's between Tony and, there's no building people involved in 17, is that correct?
Code enforcement.
it's code enforcement.
Right.
Yeah.
And I guess it's the whole thing that if we have a citizen that feels aggrieved by it, they can always come to city council and talk to us. I don't ever want to hear a bureaucrat or Tony or anybody telling me they can't do that, because you can do that, and I would welcome it. Okay. Okay. Let's go ahead to number 16A. Ordinance 15, Series 2017. This is the first reading, an ordinance defining building official under the IRC. I need 3 to introduce. Mr. Gill, Mr. Ekstrom, and Mr. Weed. Would you read by title, please?
This is a bill for ordinance number 15, series of 2017, an ordinance amending section 15.06.030C of the Canyon City Municipal Code concerning the appointed building official under the International Residential Code.
Okay. Could I have a motion from council in a second? Meisner?
Mr. Mayor, I'd move that we approve ordinance 15, series of 2017 with the amended language on first reading.
Second.
do you want to be specific what the amended language is?
I do not want any reference to individuals,
Well, yeah, I mean,
other individuals. I don't want that vagueness in there.
oh, yeah, no, I mean, what I was going to say is, in ordinance number 15, the final whereas, the city administrator has the authorization to appoint the building inspector. And then in the appointment section, in the therefores, get rid of other individuals and insert building inspector. I believe that's what you were driving at earlier.
So, Mr. Mayor, I would move that we approve ordinance 15, series of 2017, with the amendments to change the verbiage of individuals to building inspector. Would that meet that?
Yeah.
Cover both of those.
Yeah, I think that's what you were asking about.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
I still
there wa-
second
second
it.
that with that change.
Second.
Main second, any discussion then on that motion? Does everybody understand what that motion is, what we're inserting, taking out and inserting? Okay, would you call a roll, please?
Councilmember Meisner?
Deanne, are you good there? You don't
Yes,
look
I
like
guess
you're good.
my only question was in the second to last line item under the section 1. Does that also need to be modified then? So after the semicolon, provided that the appointed building inspector meet the qualifications of a building inspector.
No, I think that'd be taken out because that term is defined.
Right.
Yeah. So it would just end at under this code, period.
Okay.
Good now, Deanne?
Yes.
Aye.
Councilmember Schumacher?
Aye.
Councilmember Ekstrom?
Aye.
Councilmember Weed?
Aye.
Councilmember Gill?
Aye.
Councilmember Smith?
Aye.
Okay, now we need a motion to approve as amended.
And now we need a motion to approve the amendment?
The ordinance as amended.
The ordinance as amended, okay. A motion to have approve the ordinance as amended? Supervisor?
Mr. Mayor and Council, I move that we approve ordinance 15, series of 2017 as amended.
Made second, any comments? Okay. Would you call a roll, please?
Meisner?
Aye.
Councilmember Weed?
Aye.
Councilmember Gill?
Aye.
Councilmember Smith?
Aye.
Councilmember Ekstrom?
Aye.
Councilmember Schumacher?
Aye.
Approved by unanimous vote.
Okay, 16B, ordinance number 16, series of 2017. This is the first reading. It's an ordinance defining building official under the UCADB, which stands for the Uniform Code for the Abatement of Dangerous Buildings. I need three to introduce.
Before we introduce it, can I suggest that we change the language of the final whereas to eliminate other officials and insert building inspector?
On 16?
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I had circled too.
And/or code enforcement officials, because it's
And,
both.
right,
yeah.
and/or code enforcement.
Thank you.
Yes.
Everybody
Save a
have
little
that?
time here.
So now that the language
Yeah.
has changed,
The
I
language
would
has
like to
changed.
introduce that as one of those three.
Mr. Exner, Mr. Weed, and Mr. Meisner to introduce. Would you lead by title, please, with the change?
This is a bill for ordinance number 16, series of 2017, and ordinance amending section 8.40.030D of the Canyon City Municipal Code regarding appointed officials under the Uniform Code for the Abatement of Dangerous Buildings.
Could I have a motion and a second? Mr.
Mayor.
Exner?
I move that we approve ordinance number 16, series of 2017.
Second.
Give it to her.
Jinx jokes.
Ms. Meisner, Kathy, seconded. Any discussion on the motion?
Are we good, are we good, Deanne? Dana?
Dina,
Sorry, Dina.
yes.
I'll get it. We're good?
Okay. Would you call a roll, please?
Councilmember Ekstrom?
Aye.
Councilmember Schumacher?
Aye.
Councilmember Weed?
Aye.
Councilmember Smith.
Aye.
Councilmember Gill.
Aye.
Councilmember Meisner.
Aye.
Approved by unanimous vote.
Okay, ordinance number 16C, it's an ordinance number 17. It's a series of 2017. This is the first reading, an ordinance adding a new definition of city administrator under chapter 8.32. I will need three to introduce, Mr. Ekstrom, Mr. Weed, and Ms. Smith. And would you read by title, please?
This is a bill for ordinance number 17, series of 2017, and ordinance amending section 8.32.010 of the Canyon City Municipal Code by the addition of a new definition for the city administrator.
Okay. Could I have a motion?
Mr. Mayor, I'll make a motion on first reading for a bill for ordinance number 17, series of 2017.
Do we hear a second?
Second.
Second, Mr. Weed. Any discussion on that motion? Hearing none, could you call the roll, please?
Schumacher.
Aye.
Councilmember Weed.
Aye.
Councilmember Ekstrom.
Aye.
Councilmember Meisner.
Aye.
Councilmember Smith.
Aye.
Councilmember Gill.
Aye.
Approved by unanimous vote.
Okay, number 17, this is the first amendment to the contract for legal services. Could I have a report from the city attorney?
So at the request of the city administrator, we have drafted this amendment to your contract for legal services to put legal services on a retainer, a flat fee. The amendment outlines what's covered under that flat fee and what is not. I'll answer any questions you have.
Okay, let's have a council, no, let's do the written, any written requests. We have two written requests. Ms. Kimmel, would you like? Oh, John Hamrick, are you sure? All right. Mr. Hamrick, would you approach the microphone and discuss number 17?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I did review this language, and I do have comments on it. Just to give you a little background, at my last paying job, I collaborated a whole bunch on contract language like this, and so this is where these comments are coming from. But under definitions, I would suggest that you have the attorney and the city all in quotes, not just attorney, and then the quote city unquote, because you're defining a term there. That then kind of lines up with most of the language you have in the recitals and agreement. Under recitals, under B, you say it says as a monthly retainer amount as opposed to at an hourly rate. So there's a typo there. I think it's supposed to be just an hourly rate.
Actually, I think that reads correctly.
Be paid a monthly retainer as opposed to at an hourly rate.
Yeah, as opposed to being paid at an hourly retainer rate.
It doesn't say that, as opposed to being paid. It says opposed to at. And so that's my suggestion. Under the agreement compensation, the first line and the last line refers to a fee and a rate. Those terms probably should be the same. Should either both be fee or both be rate. In addition, you have 3 bullet points there, 1, 2, and 4. There's no 3 bullet point. Under the agreement C, it says the attorney shall submit itemized statements to the city which identify the actual hours worked and matters worked on a monthly basis for all legal services provided under this First Amendment. I would think that the city council and the mayor be interested in also the identity of the person providing the services, and I would suggest that you reorder that, that the attorney shall submit itemized statements to the city on a monthly basis for all legal services provided under this First Amendment. which identify the individual providing the services, the matters worked on, and the actual hours worked. And if you like, I can give you that language. And just point out under D, you say the city and the attorney. And so it's just a matter of, you know, consistency to have those defined terms similar. Those are my comments.
All right, well, so we can keep them fresh in our mind, let's address some of these. I agree that we should change in the first under compensation. IV should be III. That kind of makes sense. Good catch. As far as identifying the city and the attorney, I think that's already defined. I'm asking Catherine this. It's, we don't need to change that. That's clear, okay? And then we already, in the statements that we get, it's already identified the subject matter and the hours billed. It's not broken down by individual. There's only 2 individuals involved here.
Down by individual.
Is it? I'm sorry.
Yeah, there's initials on there for which
okay, I
person.
missed that.
Our billing system, that's the only way we can put in time.
So then that part's already in their billing.
It may be in the billing, but it's not in the agreement.
Attorney would tell you if it's not in writing, it doesn't apply.
I think there's just,
Happy to make that change if you'd like.
yeah, it's a simple change.
Yeah,
But
it's simple.
I think the relevance is that we just want to know, you know, as we start down this path, what are we asking?
Who are we paying for
Who
what?
are we paying, and, you know.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Catherine, under 7A, is there a difference between, on the first line, the flat fee versus the flat rate? Because I know the rate for travel time might be different than.
You mean the terms fee and rate? Yeah, I mean, typically, you could call it a flat rate if you wanted to. A rate's really something that's multiplied by something else, and a fee is, that's the way it's termed in the legal world, but I'm happy to change it to whatever you'd like.
Travel time more of a rate than a fee?
Well, but the travel time's included in that flat fee, yeah.
So we'll just change that word to fee. And
Fee. Flat fee, the last.
Which one do you want to change?
Oh, I
I'm
see what
sorry.
you're saying.
last-
Oh, I'm with you.
Very
now.
last
Okay,
word
I
of
wasn't
A.
with.
Yeah, it makes
I
sense.
understand what you're saying.
What
Yeah,
you
we
said.
can change.
7A, the very last
Very
word.
last sentence.
Yes, okay.
Yeah.
John did that. Good job, John.
Okay. Anything else, John?
That's it.
All right. Any questions of John? Thank you, John.
Thanks a lot, John. Appreciate it.
All right. We have Sheila Kimmel.
Thank you for the opportunity. I was really hoping John would cover a lot of my points before I got here. But this is more of an educational opportunity for some of the citizens that missed a few things along the line. And so I tried first to find the original contract, and after many hours of viewing and researches, I failed to find it. So I don't know exactly some of the background here. So this is where, hopefully in educating me, it might educate some of the other citizens out there too. But when I was reading this, a couple of things came to me, and one of them, I guess, would go directly to Kathleen. Catherine, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
One thing I didn't see, and it might be covered in the original contract, is a terms for cancellation. You know, so if it's,
It's a,
is it?
we serve at the pleasure of council, so they have
At
a
will.
right to terminate
So
at
as she
will.
has asked these questions, maybe we can answer them as we go along. So, Ms. Kimmel,
Yeah.
they have a contract with council, and before I fully answer your question, is your contract public record? Okay,
Yeah,
great.
I just couldn't find
Okay.
it.
So,
Make a public records request.
She did, I just didn't have time today to do it.
Okay.
okay, so it is renewed every 2
Okay.
years. Yeah.
Every 2 years.
Every,
is- and
yes,
so-
as,
Well, it runs on the 2-year cycle after the election, so it'll be in January of 2018, and then it will be 2 years, because we haven't been here 2 years, we've only been here 6 months.
It's a 2-year lock with no right to cancel if the.
Oh, no, they can cancel it
Yeah,
at any
it's-
time. It just,
At
they have an
will.
automatic renewal 2-year
Okay.
period that's in the. yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
It's required in
Yeah.
our charter,
In
in
the
the
charter.
city's
Okay.
charter, that every January after an election cycle, that we're required to renew the contract
Okay,
with
gotcha.
the city attorney.
Okay,
So-
very good.
And if you reference Article 5 and Article 5 of the charter and Article 7
That in here?
of code, Article 7, Section 1 specifically covers the city attorney
Okay.
and gives you all that information about term and
I got a lot
when we're gonna renew. But the agreement itself, like Scott has
Yeah.
mentioned, gives us the ability to kick them out the door.
Okay, well, be gentle. Okay. Then this question is, and I didn't find this when I was viewing all of our hours of video, very interesting. I'm sure you talked about this, but I didn't catch any of it in the general session or general government or at council meetings. But I was wondering what you did in the process of deciding for an outside service rather than having one in-house, the pros and the cons, and the cost. Because I see there's going to be some benefits, but when I looked at the costs, I was astounded and stuff from a citizen's point of view. So I was wondering if somebody could help re-inform me and the public what the process was in deciding to go out of house versus bringing it in-house.
Well, Scott and I can work on this. This goes back, when I was first elected, so it would have been January, February of last year or something, and us working with Mr. Havens and trying to decide where are we going to go forward with Mr. Havens, how long does he want to work in terms of retirement, and us also recognizing his illness,
Yes.
and that we needed to develop a plan. And so Mr. Havens and us essentially decided that we would look at an alternative legal service that would function with John in the interim until January of 2018. Unfortunately, we didn't make it there. Soon as John did tons of research with Tony and recommended, was it 3, Tony, or 4? I think, anyways, we told John, you know the business, you tell us, give us some attorneys that you feel like could come in here and do what we need to do. And the current firm that we have was one of those 4 people. We then looked at those people, we did interviews with those people in an executive session. I don't remember the specific date, but we did an executive session and interviewed those 3 attorney firms, I think, and then decided upon this particular firm that that's who we would use until January of 2018 to work with John and make a transition, because we anticipated that being the end of John's tenure. So that kind of gets you where we're at. If you look at the overall level of business that the city is doing today compared to where we were at prior to at least me coming on council, there's a phenomenal amount of legal work that we're doing today versus what we were doing 2 years ago. And whether it be, if John were on staff today, and we did not have an outside attorney firm, I think we would be looking at the possibility of having to hire an assistant attorney to help with all the legal work that we're going through.
I guess that was one of the things when I was looking at this, and pardon me if I'm not, but I looked at, you could have an attorney, assistant attorney, even a paralegal, and be about at the same yearly rate. And I don't know if you were going to move towards the direction of also maybe bringing back in-house. Look, logistically, it makes it more accessible to you on a daily basis. But when you, I don't know what John's staffing level was when he passed, but I looked at that and I said, well, I don't know what direction you're taking here, and what you're doing now makes sense. It really does to me, but I'm confused about some of the other things.
Well, I think one of the things that we certainly took into
Yeah.
consideration in hiring, going with a law firm as opposed to bringing in an individual or even a team, is that by going to a law firm that specializes in municipal law, we have a stable of attorneys with a variety of specialties, as opposed to having to rely on one person. Like a jack, the saying is a jack of all trades and master of none. Well, we went with people who were experts in specific areas of municipal law, and there's a variety of those expertises available at this law firm.
Can I ask?
Oh, I was going to say also, you had a concern about accessibility to our lawyers. We have, where John was a one-man show who was absolutely remarkable, an absolute wonder, it would still take a considerable time for him to meet and get back to us with our needs, and now we have instantaneous, almost, legal advice and turnaround for the things that we need.
How many did John have for his staff, his legal staff?
He had an assistant.
He had
I
an
think he had an assistant. That was about it. And
assistant attorney or just?
no, just more or less a personal
Yeah.
assistant. Yeah, it wasn't even a paralegal. I don't
right.
believe
Well-
she's qualified as a paralegal. So
The secretary.
It was secretary.
Yeah, there you
Yeah.
go. That's a different ballgame and stuff.
So we had a lot of value with John. There's no
Yeah,
doubt about it. We
no
had,
question.
we had a lot of institutional knowledge that he had, as far as the history of the community. That's gone. We lost it. And when we as a council sat down, we understood we were going to risk losing that. And now we have to make up with that, with having outside counsel that has that experience. And again, they're finding things in the codes and in the ordinances that, again, John was a one-man show, and there was a lot that he couldn't get to, and so we're kind of cleaning the house now and getting that.
Yeah.
And that's why you see so much of this happening.
Yeah, and I think that's good to have a new set of eyes on the thing, definitely. But like I said, one man and the work world wouldn't handle it. My other question for you guys, and I'll be done, is when you compare our community size of your 16,000 or proper whatever population, about what type of staffing do other communities have for their, if they are doing it in-house? What does it take to operate it? I really don't know the answer to that. Do you know?
I think most communities are doing exactly what we're doing.
Okay.
It's such a diverse area that it just takes a firm with, as Dennis said, lots of expertise in different areas. Would be hard to find a John Havens again that would have 26 years of follow-up. And it's just the rules and requirements change a lot, and we need that. But a lot of towns, I don't know how many your firm represents, but quite a few. So, and the towns have gone to that.
A lot of towns that are smaller than ours have firms just like ours as well, including
Yeah, most of our clients are actually smaller than Canyon City, so.
Well, thank you very much for the education.
Okay. Thank you, Sheila.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for coming
Bye.
in. Okay.
Just keep in mind that I was a little surprised at the figures also. Not surprised, but, I mean, they're big numbers. But these people are doing a ton of work.
Okay, thank you all. Kathy, Planning Commission.
If we're going to agree this is a contract.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, we have to continue on here. Well, that was.
Distracted by my words.
We need a motion and a second.
I'll make a motion.
Mr. Weed.
I'll make the motion to approve the First Amendment to the contract for legal services with the changes we discussed, specifically in 7A, changing Roman numeral 4 to Roman numeral 3, and the very last word in section 7A, delete the word rate and replace it with the word fee.
Second, with the
Wait,
corrections.
We had one more, I think, in subsection
Oh,
C.
yeah.
Sorry, on the next page. You wanted to have who is providing the work identified in the itemized statements.
Right, in the bill.
correct?
By what you're already doing.
I don't know if we actually
Oh, okay.
decided
I'm
we
sorry.
wanted to do that or not.
I think.
Said you
I
did
think-
it already.
I think Meisner wanted it in writing.
I don't think it, I mean, it's already there. We're not asking you to do anything additional, so if we snap in the language, everybody's happy and we know what happened.
Okay, and also in item 7C, specifically specifying that the monthly statements will include project, hours billed, and responsible person.
Okay. Everybody good with this? Okay, I have a motion and a second, and the discussion is on that. Have we discussed it? Mr. Ekstrom?
I second.
Yeah.
Good second.
Do we have a second?
Yes, we do.
I do want to discuss, I missed the executive session. Is everyone okay with it? Because this is where I just defer to you guys, especially if,
Yes.
I mean, talk pros and cons. I need to know about it. I missed the executive session, so.
I think we were concerned about the increase in cost,
Yeah.
and and actually we started council session a little bit late because our discussion went, kind of beyond. Some of the things that we talked about were that our council we no longer want to just talk about getting things done. We actually want to start getting things done and accomplished. And when we start accomplishing and wanting to pursue, new projects or moving forward in our community, that unfortunately, it requires an attorney. And so their list of duties is quite a bit longer than it was before. I'd also like to point out that one of those things is the nuisance abatement process and procedures, not only for some of the properties that we already have, but also for the 35 homes that have been determined through a study that we have. That's going to take some attorney involvement to take care of those. And those homes, they are dangerous homes. And it's a cost to our society, and it's an issue that we haven't addressed as a community for a very long time. And by not addressing that, it creates a cost to our community by not taking care of those homes when they were small problems. Now they're really big problems. And so this is where it's starting to cost. Besides the $5,200 for cleaning up, attorneys is also one of those costs that we have to deal with it. But it's important that we do. Just as an example, one of the properties that we recently abated, not only was it a property that had no sewer or water and incredible hygiene problems, but also when they abated it, there were many criminals that had warrants for arrest on that property. And there was prostitution and illicit drugs. Those are not just financial costs to our community, but also costs to our public safety and our well-being. And so those are things that, we need our attorneys to help us to have a safer community and overall. And so I just wanted to point that out as part of our discussion.
The other thing we brought up is reviewing this on didn't put a time on it, but that can be done. Just seeing how many hours that they're working versus how many hours, they're billing, and look at the total amount and see if it's increasing or decreasing so that we can change the flat
I
rate.
definitely see the value of that, because I don't know if we necessarily had that in the past with the previous attorney. Now we can look at it and say, wow, we're spending a lot of money on weeds.
There was a sheet that was put out, which I think you probably got a copy of it, but yeah. But we can monitor how many hours are actually being spent. And also it's broken down into different categories as far as building, as far as city council, as far as this and that, so we can see where the focus of the energies are and where the money is going. You know, the legal representation is going in what category of the city. And there's probably 15 or 20 different categories.
Right. Yeah, and I see the value of that.
Okay.
Quickly. Not
Quickly.
But, I mean, I realize the cost is a significant issue. And I'm going to tell you that when we created the marijuana ordinance, I think that told me the value of having an organization that, such as the one that we have. We essentially started out with nothing on the table, and in the end wound up with a document that everybody could support. We didn't have any objections from the community, and they took that ordinance from week to week and made those modifications and got it back to us. And there was just no way in the world that John would have been able to do that.
Or one individual attorney.
Or just one individual. It's just that they've got all these resources. And that's just such a huge value to us as council, is to be able to pull in all of those resources. And unfortunately, there's an expense associated with it.
Okay. Thank you. Have we discussed this enough?
No, I think we're good.
Okay, we're good. Then I'm going to call for the roll.
Councilmember Weed.
Aye.
Councilmember Schumacher.
Aye.
Councilmember Gill.
Aye.
Councilmember Meisner.
Aye.
Councilmember Ekstrom.
Aye.
Councilmember Smith.
Aye.
Approved by unanimous vote.
Okay, one more item, the Planning Commission.
I just wanted to go ahead, you guys handed out the list for Planning Commission, the letters that we received. We need to do some interviews, so we need to check some calendars and see when you want to do that.
How many are we appointed? 1?
3.
Remember seeing?
And we need them by the meeting in July.
Regarding the meeting in July, are we going to have a quorum? Because I can already tell you I'm not going to be here on
Not
the
going to
3rd.
be here either. July 3rd.
Which?
July 3rd.
But we need to appoint these guys so they can have their Planning Commission meeting. So
Okay.
if that means a special meeting in June, we're limited on maybe next Monday because some of us are going to CML. We have the council retreat on the 29th, the Thursday, the 29th. If you want to fit that in, I'm not sure whether Bill, what that entails with Bill.
He wouldn't be involved, we would just.
Right. Is he not, he's not here for a full day for the retreat?
Yes, that's going to go from 8:30 to 4, so it'd have to be like from 4 to 5:30, something like that.
We piggyback it with our June 19th meeting.
Yeah, you could do that too.
Be able to look at it tomorrow. I don't think it'd be as big as this meeting was tonight.
Yeah, we
If
could do
If
that.
it's not going to be as big a meeting, I'm okay doing it after.
We'll do an agenda, we'll go through the agenda at our meeting tomorrow, and then we'll be able to do that, and then get an email out to everybody and say whether it'll work for that day. And then if it doesn't work for the 19th, we're gonna have to punt.
Is there a requirement to be a city resident? Are all of these people city residents?
I think that's why some of them didn't come in, because some of them on those committees, I think of quite a few of them on the marijuana committee was not a resident, but they were in the industry.
Okay, so Kathy, we're going to try this on the 19th. After
And
the
you will
meeting.
hear from me probably tomorrow whether that works or not. If it doesn't, then we'll. That's all I have.
That's for interviews, right?
That's interviews, yeah, it's a lot of
Okay.
interviews.
Okay,
About
thank
2 hours.
Thank you.
Dennis, what do you think? Doesn't it take quite a while to interview 7? Couple hours?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
It'll
15
probably
minutes.
figure 2 hours, I think is.
You're gonna want the same process that they don't sit here and listen to each other, they come in and go out and kick
We
them
interview
Right.
them one at a time.
one at a time, okay?
In chambers, right here.
Okay,
Okay.
I'll let everybody know tomorrow.
Okay, then we are adjourned.
Thank you.